you. All right, thank you very much. Let me ask my panel to come and join me on the stage. First of all, racing. Up here is Dami Adepoju from Development Director from Marriott International. Followed by Amos, our award winner, CEO of Great Lakes, and ambling towards the stage, Erwan Garnier from Radisson Hotels Group. Okay, do we want to talk about domestic tourism, or should we think of something else to talk about? No. Domestic tourism, I thought we would actually widen that a bit to talk about regional tourism, because Amos is going to tell us all about East Africa and the East African community, which of course is visa-free for nationals of those countries. We have ECOWAS. Dami is going to talk to us about some of West Africa, as is Erwan, which again is visa-free for nationals of those countries. So widen it a bit from domestic tourism to regional tourism. But the domestic tourism and its advantages. Okay, let's start. Dami, you've got experience particularly of what's been happening in Nigeria. So let's focus on Nigeria first of all. What happened from, let's say, July 2020 onwards when the hotels were allowed to open up? What happened?
Well, I think the hotels really saw the importance of the domestic markets following the pandemic, and seeing the slow arrivals of international travelers back into the country. It was really the domestic markets that sustained demand through July to the end of the year, and it was mostly in staycations. So local residents in big cities like Lagos, Abuja, going to hotels on the weekends and boosting demand then. In the festive periods like December, you saw a lot of people who are coming back home for Christmas and for the holidays and staying in hotels more than they used to traditionally when they would just stay with family and friends. We've seen a growth in cities like Lagos in the social calendar. And so, from October through the end of the year, there's one event or the other that requires people booking and staying in hotels in large numbers. And so that's a phenomenon that's been growing the past few years, but has really exploded in the last couple years and has made hoteliers sit up and see the potential that they have in the local markets closer to home.
So that was accelerated, let's call it, rather than caused, accelerated by the pandemic.
Yes.
Let's just hold that thought. Erwan, what can you tell us about your experiences of domestic tourism in some of the other countries?
Just to come back just on Nigeria, because we have a few properties over there, what we saw with domestic tourism and during COVID is that obviously, as I said correctly, Dami, is that the domestic tourism was extremely important. But what we saw is that our business hotel became leisure hotel, and thus the occupancy have been skyrocketing during this period. And we saw the same tendency in key French-speaking cities in West Africa, such as Dakar or Abidjan, which were obviously the borders were closed, and hotels that had the potential to attract business and leisure, such as urban resort hotel, were in fact getting the benefit of domestic tourism during the weekend.
Is it just city? Is it just a city tourism phenomenon?
No, it's not just a city. In fact, what happened is, because of this period where people were pretty much locked into their own country, they, instead of going abroad, which is most of the people that have the finances go to Europe or go to the US decided to stay in their home country. And thus the resort destination started to develop even more. So if you look at Dakar, you have a destination called Sali that have been, in fact, full most of the weekend. And it's mainly based on domestic tourism. And today, we have a hotel that is under development. Casada has recently acquired a new property because we saw that the performance is there, but the product needs to come as well.
Okay, Amos, talk to us about East Africa and what's been happening in domestic and regional tourism.
For Uganda's case, it's been a very interesting work. Because of our educational background, we've studied so much about the prairies, rainlands, and all these places. And there's been almost no education on how beautiful, for example, Uganda is. And of course, it's one of my areas of advocacy as an individual. I do a lot of writing, engaging guys on what makes Uganda unique. I've been in meetings where guys, top educated Ugandan guys, and talk about how beautiful things that make Uganda unique, and everybody thinking, you must be lying, this can't be. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I must say things have improved. Internally, of course, there was trouble for different reasons other than adventure. People were going, of course, for introductions, business from one small city to another. That happened quite a lot. The key thing came in during COVID. So during COVID, I was one of the major focuses in the country because people were saying, now you have no business coming in from abroad, so you're stuck with us. And I also said, but you also have no opportunity to go abroad. You're also stuck with us, you know. So we started engaging each other, but there was a lot of growth internally for domestic tourism because the borders were locked, and that was a fantastic thing. And what happens, I personally believe that domestic tourism helps in redistribution of wealth. So, for example, if I moved from Kampala to Jinja, you're moving some bit of money from slightly better town to a much slightly lower town. So you don't necessarily improve the national GDP. The national GDP comes in from abroad. The other thing about domestic tourism is also that people get proud of their own country. That helps. You know, the people share stuff on social media. They're able to actually encourage so many other people to come. I mean, if I shared anything on my Facebook page, I'll have people from many parts of the world that will be able to see. So as Uganda started sharing a lot of this, a lot of Ugandans started seeing how beautiful the country was. More travel happened. Of course, the other one is also it gives a chance to locals to be able to see the opportunities in terms of investment. We've seen quite a lot of people starting to invest within the country. Uganda's investing within the country. A lot of people didn't have confidence in what to invest, how to invest in tourism, but I can also see it because I believe that for total investment to happen, the locals must also take part in the investment. They must actually be the lead for things to prosper very well. But at the regional level, even before COVID, Kenya did very well with the Ugandan market. In 2019, number one source market for Kenya's tourism was the US with 245,000 travelers. But the second was Uganda. They had 223,000 Ugandans that went to Kenya. And also it was helped by the formation of the Uganda National Airline, and most of them were going to the beach. And so there's a direct flight, 1 hour, 20 minutes out of Entebbe to Mombasa. And of course, the Mombasa community as well did a fantastic job coming to Uganda, marketing that stuff. Now, the other thing is that going to national parks across the region, they have harmonized the entrances. So to enter a national park as a Ugandan, I pay about $6. So a Kenyan will come and also pay same amount of money like I am paying. I will also go to Tanzania and pay the same amount of money that local Tanzanian is paying. That has really inspired a lot of people to travel across within the region. Of course, there's also domestic tourism has a number of components, the foreign residents as well. Foreign residents have similar approach, but for residential cost of entrances into national parks. Of course, much as there is an open East African community, there is still a challenge there. We still have some rivalry. I want to see the same equivalent number of Kenyans coming to Uganda as Ugandans are going to Kenya. That's a dream. It balances out. 2019, they say an average Ugandan spent about $2,000 in Kenya. And if you have 223,000 1,000 Ugandans going to Kenya, you have way over $400 million earned by the economy of Kenya. So I would also say, okay, I'd also love to see more Kenyans coming so that we balance out the earnings. So that's been a bit of the scenario for East Africa.
You mentioned pricing there, and Uganda reduced the price of the entry to national parks, didn't it?
Yeah.
For all of EAC, was it?
It's Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda have done the same.
Right.
Tanzania was the last to come on the scene, but for a long time there was a lot of reduction. Uganda Level Authority played a very key role for us during the COVID time. In fact, even as operators.
I always look at this and think how unfair it is that foreigners have to pay more. But this is one of the things about domestic tourism, that there was a survey done here in Morocco by I think by an academic who basically, the respondents, Moroccan nationals, were saying that everything was just too expensive for them. Is that the case in Nigeria? Pricing for the domestic market? Is there a dual system?
Not to the extent that Amos is talking about in East Africa. And I think we have a lot to learn in West Africa from how they've been able to integrate their own version of ECOWAS. We haven't done as great a job in integrating trade and movement across borders. And we do have some good examples. There's the Nigeria to Ghana corridor, which has been has made a big impact in Ghanaian tourism. A lot of Nigerians going there, not only on holidays, but to buy real estate and contribute to the economy there. But I think our governments haven't put tourism on the forefront like they have in East Africa. There's a lot of growth opportunity there. There's a lot that people are waking up to see potential in tourist attractions in West African destinations. And so locally there will be some growth, but I don't see, in some of the attractions that do exist, a dichotomy in the pricing. It's usually just one price. If you wanted to go to Abeokuta to see the rock in that city. I think there will be more to be done. In the Southwest, a lot of the governments are starting to put tourism on their agendas. In Lagos, in other Southwest states, you see tourism master plans on their political agenda. There's a balancing that they have to do because there's other needs that also need to be focused on. And I think as things settle over time, there will be more action to be done to implement some of the political agendas they want to.
But does government need a different agenda, a different policy approach to domestic tourism compared to international tourism? Erwan, you've got to...
I don't think they need a different strategy. They need a clear strategy for tourism to start with. If you look at the domestic tourism being more developed and the international tourism, in fact, being more developed in East Africa, it's because there is infrastructure, there is airline connections, there is the whole lodge and safari that is attracting. So there is natural resources that are being maintained and are being available for access. So now, looking at West Africa, there is obviously much less of leisure destination and infrastructure being available. The routing is also not as efficient, and visa is, on a case-by-case, being quite highly improved. So if you look at Dakar, for example, or Senegal in general, has highly invested into domestic tourism and international tourism in improving their infrastructure, having a new international airport, and you can see that they're revamping this whole area that is, in fact, attracting international investment, and in this case, developing the domestic tourism. But overall, the government, I think, should enhance their tourism strategy for both domestic and international tourism, regardless.
Amos, you're nodding. What's your experience of what they say the Ugandan government is doing, international versus domestic tourism?
I think for Uganda's case, domestic tourism has a very interesting way. The thing is that a lot of Ugandans don't expect to actually pay to see things within their own country. A Ugandan will be very, very happy to go and pay for $500 a room in Dubai or Kenya. But if including my lawyer, so my lawyers, I pay them, they send me a check every month. But if they ask me for a room, they don't understand why they should pay me a single cent for any of my lodges in the national park, because they think, well, it's just like I'm coming to your home. And they don't understand the whole costs implication that is associated with it. So for me, I still believe that there's a need to fight the culture norms. It's my home. I need to enter national park for free, so you have to explain to people that you need resources to look after this wildlife and so on and so forth. So there must be a strategy that makes sure that people learn. The education must also change in schools. So kids must be taught. It's one of the things that I do a radio program every Tuesday. One of the things that I really push for is that government should integrate proper education on what does the Nile mean, having the source of the Nile, and so having the best opportunities for rafting, or mountain gorillas, or chimpanzee trekking in the country, having the big five, what does it mean to them? It's good for us to do this kind of education for kids such that they love their own country and therefore be able to help it grow. For international market, of course, like it says, we need a total one strategy that clearly divides the approach to external markets, but also we don't just have a strategy for external market, meaning out of Africa. We need an external market, an external strategy for Africa as well as Uganda, for example. Intra-Africa tourism is going to grow. I think by 2018, the last statistics I read, there are about 180 million Ugandan Africans that were moving within Africa. By 2032, they expect that 300 million Africans will move within Africa. And that means that, the key thing would be Africans wanting to see other African countries. I'm seeing a lot of Nigerians, for example. I was told Rwanda Air has 100 Nigerians every day on a flight going to tour Rwanda. Uganda Airlines is starting flights from Entebbe to Lagos. I am hoping that I can be able to see you guys coming to enjoy the beauty that my country holds. That would be a fantastic thing. But the other thing that is also a bit troublesome for Africa is visas. For me, I think because I knew Africa Hotel Investment Group guys, I got my visa within 1 week. But my friends will you need a month to be able to get a visa to come to Morocco. Connecting here, I have to go through Europe. I have to go through Dubai. So 5.5 hours to Dubai. Then I have to wait 8.5 hours connecting time. Then I have 8 hours Casablanca, 1 hour to here. It just discourages everything. So there's need, I think, for flexibility as far as aviation is also concerned to help prosper the intra-Africa tourism business.
Thanks. So here's my train of thought on this one. That government looks at tourism. Typically, one of the things it looks at typically is a foreign exchange earner. And that's why you get so much emphasis on the international market. And I read a couple of days ago that domestic tourism is often regarded as being a filler, a shock absorber. Now, isn't that what happened during the pandemic? Oh, we don't have any international tourists. What are we going to do? Oh, I'll tell you what, we'll promote domestic tourism instead. And I recall back in the election crisis in Kenya, was it 2007?
2007, yes.
Oh my goodness, we've got nothing. I tell you what, we'll promote to the domestic market. A shock absorber. So, Dami, in Lagos, we've witnessed this amazing phenomenon of a much increased domestic demand for hotels, even in the same city, down the same street. Is this temporary? Is it now going to go back to how do we get the international tourists back? And they're much more valuable because they stay longer. here in Morocco. In 2020, the domestic market stayed for 2.4 nights in registered accommodation, whilst the international market was 3.2 nights. That's a significant difference in terms of tourist dollars. So do we go through this cycle of domestic tourism is a shock absorber, but let's once that's out of the way, let's go back to international tourism?
I think you have to see domestic travel as the long-term sustainable market that your business as a tourism business is going to have to appeal to, and so that's why, as a response to this increase, whether it's temporary, you're seeing more owners looking at select service properties, and those are sustainable products that, whether it's temporary, midterm, long-term, that market is going to be able to afford and keep coming back. And so it might have come as a shock absorber type solution, but I think the effects of it are going to be more long-term, because hotel businesses are long-term.
Was it habit forming?
I'm sorry?
Was it habit forming what happened in 2021 and into 2022? That people started staying in hotels, and will they continue doing that? Has it become a habit for the nationals?
I think it has. I think it has. I think it's like I said, I think it's also, and he alluded to this, there's more interest in seeing your country. There's more interest in seeing your continent. And so beyond just the national citizens traveling to other parts of their country, I'm hearing more, it's a social media thing where people are wanting to see Africa more. Africans in Africa want to travel to other parts of the country. People want to go, Nigerians want to go to Ghana for wedding celebrations, for holidays. People want to go and celebrate birthdays and in other parts of the continent. There's other headwinds too that are contributing to this that are not as short-term. FX, the value of their currency is also playing a major factor, where people would want to go to Europe or North America or further afield, and they now have to look at their purchasing power and say, well, I can afford to go to Rwanda instead.
All right. Okay. Erwan, as a deal doer, a developer with Radisson, is there a difference in the product? Let's leave Nigeria out of it for the moment. Is there a difference in the product that you would want to see developed, brands that you would want to see developed for a domestic market, as opposed to an international market? Remember what I was saying earlier about how little activity there is in the economy and mid-scale markets, for example. And it's my own proposition that is what a lot of the domestic market wants. What's your take on that?
I think we can see that, if you take the key capital cities, let's say in West Africa, most of the development have been for the past 20 years on the upscale and upper upscale segment, and targeting mainly international tourism. I think, with what happened with COVID, governments and professionals and customers have been conscious of the need for offer for the domestic tourism. And domestic tourism needs not only upper upscale and upscale market, but mid-scale and upper mid-scale product. So I think there is a great opportunity for developing in secondary cities for the domestic market in this positioning, and across multiple different segments, because we're talking about business hotels, because we all know that Africa has been, instrumental into 90% of the hotels are business. But we see a growing positioning into service apartments across all operators, and this is also targeting the domestic tourism and not only the international tourism. Also, we can see a massive growth into the resort positioning. That was not the case in West Africa, if we're talking about West Africa. And this is, again, being mainly driven by domestic tourism. So long story short, I think we can look at multiple different segments in multiple different positioning. And so far, we've been mainly focusing on the business segment, 4 and 5 star.
Yeah.
And I think we can go in multiple positioning in the 4, 5 star and 3 star, but also in the service department and resort product.
Amos, briefly, because time's ticking, do you do anything differently in either your lodging product or your experience product for the domestic versus international?
Yeah, yeah. I think for certain months, for example, low season months, or October, November, I do smaller boutique room hotels, where I charge between $600 to $800, $900 a room a night. Not many Ugandans want to pay for that. But during the low season, I'll take maybe $300, but still very high. But what I think I would conclude with is that we need to have a strategy for even accommodation for domestic markets. Like our domestic markets want TV in the rooms, they want music, they have a very different interest from the general population that wants to come for a quiet time.
Dami, you got hundreds of brands. Well, today anyway, we'll probably have more tomorrow. What are you doing in terms of brand propositions to owners?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing as owners are being more institutionalized in their thinking, they're looking at select service more seriously than they've traditionally done. 50% of our signings till 2024 are in select service, Pattaya, 4 Points by Marriott, 4 Points by Sheraton brands. Franchise has become a key driver of growth for us in Africa, where traditionally it used to be managed, and that's creating opportunities for local operators as well to get into the game and kind of learn from big brands like Marriott and the rest of us. So we're seeing more interest without even having to do too much education. With local owners saying, I want to do select service because I think that's where my feasibility is guiding me to do that. And Pattaya, 4 Points, Residence Inn because of the extended stay market that has been created. And Airbnb has kind of tapped into, and so a lot of people are seeing the yields and the opportunities there. And so we are seeing more interest in extended stay as well.
Okay, how do you convince an owner who's got a primary site in a secondary city that Ritz-Carlton's probably not going to work that well and that he really ought to go for a Protea?
Finding the middle ground, and it doesn't take as much work now as it used to. Where before we would see people come and say, I want to build this 5-star luxury hotel in my hometown. You tell them that's probably not going to work, and you show them the numbers, and they see reason too, and we end up somewhere in the middle. You could do a premium if it works for that particular market, or let's look at select service, and it's not as challenging as it used to be.
Okay, all right. Time's up. Erwan, Amos, Dami, thank you very much.